Hello and welcome to the Precipice podcast. It's awesome to have you with us today. Here at Precipice, we believe that we are redefining success and helping you become more effective and efficient at what you do.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Precipice. So, we are on week 4 of the Precipice podcast, and today we are talking about the fourth and final thing on our 4-part framework on how to develop good habits. And so, just a quick recap of where we've come from. We have spoken about having a good goal, why it's so important to have a good goal when you're trying to create a habit. We've spoken about having the right environment, an environment that helps you create the good habits that you want, or also deters you from continuing with the bad habits that you may have. And then we spoken about aiming for the start line. So it's you showing up and you aiming for the start line and not trying to aim for the finish. So I don't know if you even remember, Ross told a really cool story about a guy who went to gym for 2 minutes, and I think that story is so important and so crucial because it's just like aim for showing up, just aim to start. And today we're going to be talking about the fourth and final thing, which is rewarding yourself, how you reward yourself when you complete the habits or don't do the thing that you didn't want to do. So, Ross, bro, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Talks, how you doing?
I'm alright, thanks, man. Tell us a little bit about you being in Joburg. I know you were in Joburg last week. So how was that, bro?
Yeah, it was so good, so cold.
Yeah.
As guys from KZN, we're not used to that kind of cold, but it was super good catching up with Louise's parents and then visiting some friends on the way back. Shout out to Jordan because I know he subscribed to this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Listen, I feel like Joburg is ridiculously cold. So if you are in Joburg, wow.
Yeah, we're sorry for you.
You are a legend. But so let's talk a little bit about rewarding yourself. What does that look like? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're taking habits, and oftentimes with habits, you'll notice with bad habits, the bad habits are the ones where you get instant gratification, and the good habits tend to be the ones where you don't get instant, or not the good habits, but the habits that are difficult to create. So what we're trying to do here is take bad habits and make them more difficult to do by either punishing ourselves, and I'm not talking in like a sadistic or twisted way, and we're trying to take the good habits and reward ourselves for it.
Yeah. So, you just mentioned something so interesting and that just brought up a thought. So you spoke about how the bad habits usually give us instant gratification. And so one of the things I just thought of now is that oftentimes, and I think it's so important, especially with habits, is that don't sacrifice what you want the most for what you want now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So it's like, if I want to lose weight, and someone calls me up, is like, hey, let's go to McDonald's and go have some meal. And so what I want the most is to lose weight, but what I want now might be that McDonald's meal, but having that McDonald's meal now is sabotaging what I want the most. And so, I mean, you can look at that in whatever circumstance or whatever situation that you're in, but it's just like, don't sacrifice what you want the most for what you want now. And I think that's such a crucial thing to be able to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why we say that the habits you do now is casting a vote for who you want to be in the future.
Yeah.
Because each time you do that thing, it's like adding on to who you are eventually going to become. So no, it's absolutely true. But like back into the whole thing of rewarding yourself. We're taking good habits and making them fun and rewarding to do, but bad habits and making them unattractive to do. And one of the ways we do this is when we do habits, we talk about there's 4 phases that we go through. There's the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. Okay. Now the cue, let's use an example with exercise because it's something we're both familiar with. And I'm sure a lot of our audience would be familiar with it to some degree. Let's say you want to get into the habit of running. So what you could do is make your cue your alarm clock, or putting on your running shoes after the alarm clock. That's the cue. Okay. Now yeah, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, so just as you mentioned this whole thing of a queue, I'm just thinking about myself now. So whenever I'm going to study in the morning, I always make a cup of coffee.
Mm.
And after I make that cup of coffee, it's sort of makes this transition in my mind that okay, now we're about to settle down and focus on working. And the days that I don't make coffee and I just go sit down and try to do work, I struggle to concentrate.
Mm.
But then after I get that cup of coffee, it just flows more naturally. So just a little thing on the cue
Mm.
and those little things that sort of put us in the zone of doing whatever it is that we're wanting to do.
Yeah, 100%. And you're probably, I don't know about you, for me, that thing is putting my earphones in. Like sometimes I put my earphones in and there's not even music playing, but I know when the earphones are in, it's time to focus. So that's a really good example of the cue. Now, second, we're going to talk about the craving. And like a lot of our audience might be thinking, I don't crave exercise. I don't crave like eating healthily.
Let's be honest, who does? Like, who wakes up in the morning itching
Yeah.
to go have celery or
Yeah.
asparagus?
But I mean that's where habits come in play, and that's why the reward is so important. Is because you're putting something in mind. You may not be craving exercise, but you're craving the thing that's going to come afterwards, and your body knows that if it does exercise, it gets the reward afterwards, and that's where habit stacking comes in. It's where we do things in a sequence day after day, so it almost becomes automatic to us. And that's where the reward comes in. That's where we can start making things attractive to do or unattractive to do, in the case where we want to break bad habits.
Yeah, I'm just thinking now in terms of rewarding yourself and as a kid, I remember when it was supper time and I'd have to eat food and at some points I would give up and be like, you know what, I'm full and this is enough food. And I feel like most kids go through this where they just don't want to eat anymore. And I remember my dad used to always get up and take a look at the food and he'd look at it and say, okay, you know what? I just want you to give me 5 big spoons. And after these 5 big spoons, you done and you can go do whatever it is that you wanted to do. And probably in those times, I just wanted to stop eating to go play PlayStation or whatever, something silly like that. And so he's like, okay, have these 5 big spoons and then go have your reward, which is playing PlayStation. And more often than not, after those 5 big spoons, the food would be finished every single time. I don't know how he did it, but I guess that sort of brought about two things for me. Firstly, the reward. I looked forward to the reward, and that's sort of the same thing that we're talking about today. Is hey, there's put a reward at the end of the habit that you're wanting to do in order to get into a routine of doing it. But also, I think there's that little measure of accountability that was I was being kept to, like the 5 spoons. I needed to have 5 big spoons before I could get the reward. And so what we can sort of see that there are a little bit of accountability measures that we need to be able to put in place in order to help us.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really good thing there, accountability measures. And some of our audience may be thinking, but I'm not a kid. You can't trick me into doing exercise with a sweet. And I resonate with that so much. I'm not like, if you get a chocolate after you go for your run, like, like it won't make it enjoyable for me. I'll be like, okay, no, screw that. I'm not going on a run. Like, this, not worth it.
Yeah.
It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Return on investment's not great. So for me, I'm a goal-orientated person, and I love looking at data and statistics. I'm weird like that. Like I actually enjoy looking at spreadsheets. So for running, I made sure that I bought this watch. And for those of you that don't know, this is a running watch. It measures my heart rate when I run. It measures how far I've gone, the time it's taken. And what I could do, if I took a distance like 5 kilometers, I could see, okay, at first when I'm unfit, it takes me 30 minutes. But as I slowly get fitter, it takes me like 27 minutes. And how do we know that I'm getting fitter? Well, my heart rate stays at roughly the same throughout the run. So that's an indication that you're getting fitter. Or I could just run it faster, like entirely. So for a lot of people, the reward is seeing improvement. And that's why things like habit trackers, a way of measuring, and we talked about this in creating a good goal on our Instagram series. But measuring your progress is so important because for some people, the progress and the improvement is the reward. I know for me, like as a runner, I don't have a race coming up, I feel so demotivated and I just have no motivation to run. And measuring the progress and seeing my improvement week after week really helps me to keep grinding at the thing and keep at it and not feel despondent at it. It's like I'm sure you've been in a place where you've been doing something like exercising or trying to do a good habit, and you've been like, is it actually worth it?
Yeah, 5 a.m.
Yes,
on a
5
winter's
a.m.
morning. That's when you think about it. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that is so important, and an accountability measure for you might look different for me, but it is so important for us to be able to find those little things that keep us accountable. For 7-year-old me, it was my dad and the 5 big spoons, and it might not be the same today, but the point is we need to be able to find those little things that keep us accountable, that keep us in track and measure sort of our improvements and our progress, because it's so encouraging to see that you're progressing and you're not just doing things for the sake of doing it. It's like digging a hole. The encouraging thing about digging a hole is that you're seeing the hole get deeper and deeper. If you just dug and it's sort of remained the same, that would be discouraging. It's like, what's the point? But actually seeing the progress as you go deeper and deeper into whatever you're doing, it's so encouraging. So any take-home points is that find an accountability measure and find something that's going to keep you accountable and show you that, hey, actually what you're doing is working and there is improvement.
Yeah, and you measured, like, I mean, you mentioned measuring things there, and we spoke about that briefly, but I think it's also important to note that, hey, sometimes you're not going to see improvement for weeks or months. Like, let's say I want to start a habit of studying or let's say reading. Like, how do you measure improvement in reading? Like, you can't say, wow, look, I'm a good reader now. So that's where we go back to our previous point of the art of showing up, never miss a day. And that can become your reward, is never missing a day. And this is what a lot of people do, is they do habit streaking. They try never miss a day. And for them, that's the reward.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool because you look at some of the things. So just for me personally now, there's this reading thing I've been doing with a couple of people. And today, actually, funny enough, we are on day 94 of our reading thing. And so I think that's one of the things that keeps me going, is that, listen, 94 days we're in now. So it's once you see the amount of progress that you've made or the amount of time that you invested, it's so much harder to just stop it out of nowhere. So I guess also, even though you might not see literal results, you can actually see how long you've come and what you've been doing, and that sort of can keep you accountable and also encourage you to continue going forward. So thank you so much. We have come to the end of our podcast today, and we're so happy that you've been with us up until this point. And we are so excited to have you with us soon. And we're going to be announcing something super big and sort of the new direction where we feel Precipice is going in. But stay tuned, and we're going to announce that a little bit later in the coming weeks. And we're so happy that you're with us. If you like this, like on whatever platform you're seeing it, subscribe, share it with your mates.